welcome back. You're still watching Countdown with us. Just 27 minutes to go for markets to close, and markets are still trading in the red. We've not seen any substantial recovery coming in the last half an hour of trade or so, like we saw in yesterday's session, but off the lows of the day, definitely from where we opened. So Nifty right now is sitting with cuts of about 50 points. Bank Nifty has seen cuts of about over 200 points. And no respite, by the way, for the broader markets as well. The market breadth continues to be weak in today's trade as well. Just pull up the advanced decline ratio. There you go. So there's no buying actually which has come in for this space also at lower levels. Pull up the participation, the turnover. Let's see how that's panning out this Friday. Remember, throughout this week, we've seen the cash turnover being on a very subdued, not very low, but below the average turnover that we've been witnessing. And NSE F&O is also just about 6 lakh crores. A lot of stocks also moving around. Let's tell you which are the Fab 4 stocks for the day which feature in Sharad Dubey's list. Hi Sharad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Navneet. The first stock is SmartLink Holdings, which is up by almost more than 13%. Its highest level seen in almost a year after the board has approved buyback of around 42 lakh shares, which is around 25% of the equity share capital at around 130 odd rupees. This will aggregate to around 54.6 crore rupees. Up next, we're having Walkout, which is up almost 2% after the company received zero observations, zero form 483 observations from USFD for its bioequivalence plant in Aurangabad. So basically there were two drugs, tamsulosin and metropolar drugs, which are audited in this inspection. The third stock we are having is Kalpataru Power, which is up by almost 2% after Phillip Capital initiated a buy rating for this company with a target price set at around 670 odd rupees. They say that the channel checks suggest that there's a high probability for an increase in transmission and distribution orders, and also a focused approach to the margins as well as the working capital has yielded results. The last stock of the day is RITES, which is up almost 7% and this is the highest level seen in almost 6 months as the board is considering to issue a share bonus on June 24. These are the Fab 4 stocks. Back to you.
Okay, Sharad, thanks a lot for bringing those Fab 4 stocks for this Friday. But what's still reeling under some pressure is Z Entertainment continues to be the top loser, and IndusInd Bank, after falling substantially in yesterday's trade, is down another 3.5% to almost 4% currently. Let's just do a technical check on both these two stocks. Brijesh, if I could come to you for Z Entertainment first. The options data was indicating maximum open interest on the call side is at 360 and on the put side is at 300. Is that the range one can expect for Z?
Say surely, because I'm not looking stock going beyond 370 or say 365 on the higher side, but where on the downside is being concerned, the support which lies somewhere around 320 followed by 300. So it would be trading in this range itself only, 360 or say 370 on the higher side followed by 320 first and followed by 300. Right now at this juncture of time, the stock has been quoting at 337. If someone wants to go for a sell side, I would be suggesting let it rise to the level of 342 or around that juncture. Then one can go for a sell side with a stop loss of 348 and look for the target of 320 or 325.
Okay, and the other one is IndusInd Bank. And Pritesh, if I could come to you for that one, how much more downside if somebody is holding their short positions? What target would you give them?
Now see, I think the downside targets would open up if you go to the chart, if you look at the broader chart, and if you look at the candle, the bar which it created on the last week of May, it was a big solid green bar, and if that is taken out, if the levels of 1400 are taken out, then I think downside would open. I think it's the current levels. I think we should not look into it much, but my worry would start only below 1400, and then because below that the downside would start opening up. We can see levels of 1320, 1300 also.
Okay, the other one, of course, which is corrected today is Growth Finance on the back of the block deal. So keep that at the back of your mind. And by the way, a DLF that was recommended just a while ago has sunk even further. So now it's at 178.5 or lower than that. So from the time that the recommendation was given, it's gone down even further. Mayuresh Joshi of Angel Broking with us on the show. Mayuresh, good having you. Thanks so much for joining in. I wonder, the stocks like Godrej Properties, etc., continue to do well. We just did a piece today about how the Bangalore-based realtors are seeing higher sales. Those stock prices are okay. Is something wrong with DLF? Sole player with execution capability in the NCR in a meaningful way. one of the largest players, balance sheet has improved dramatically. It is not seeing buying.
Afternoon, Neeraj. I think people want to see something more in terms of the exhibited numbers. And again, I think a large element in terms of how the inventory is panning out, I think is going to be extremely critical, not just for DLF, but a whole host of players located in the NCR region. Now, the differentiated point that you rightfully put through, I think a lot of these south-based players, you actually also see new launches come through. So I think the sales velocity when it comes to pre-buying for new properties that they are launching, minimal inventory onto their books. And again, I think whatever has been constructed over the past few quarters, I think the selling run rate thereof also is pretty decent. So I think the cash flows are improving, the revenue recognition probably improves for all these cases, whereas I think where the inventory is probably stuck up, I think there is hope in an anticipation in terms of when that might get liquidated, that will create a huge impact in terms of cash flows actually bunching up in a particular quarter and exhibiting significantly in terms of revenue accretion as well. So I think those are a few pointers which probably one needs to take into cognizance. Again, I think stocks like a Godrej Property, like you mentioned, I think the kind of sales numbers that you're probably looking at, even if you consider the entire financial year, I think it was a very, very good year for Godrej Properties in general. I think the asset-light model that they're probably following in a few cities, I think that is obviously going to help them in terms of accreting their cash flows even significantly. And players like Soba, I think they have held on in terms of the numbers that they've exhibited. So again, I think the management remains very, very strong in terms of their conviction of the pre-sales velocity, the expectations in terms of probably delivering almost 4.5 million square feet in the coming financial year, 2,200 acres of land available to them, which can probably be utilized appropriately, and debt equity not remaining too high. So I think these factors are probably ensuring that a few of these stocks are probably differentiated from the rest of the realty pack.
Okay, pull up the chart of Syngene International. Remember, we highlighted the stock yesterday. It was one of the top gainers in the Nifty Mid Cap 100 index. It's currently at day's low. It's down almost 8% in trade. And let me tell you, today it touched its 52-week high. So the high of the day was somewhere about 369. And now the stock's fallen to levels of about 323. Hi, Mayuresh. Good afternoon. Any thoughts on Syngene International?
Afternoon, Navneet. No, so again, I think it's quite a divergent factor. Syngene probably looking at its 52-week highs, Biocon languishing near its all-time, near its 52-week lows as well. So again, I think the kind of business that they're into, the recognition in terms of the lumpiness of revenue that gets accreted, I think that is one sign that probably gets exhibited in terms of Syngene's number. The second element in terms of their CRAMS business remaining extremely strong and also very, very efficient in terms of the margin performance. I think that is one differentiating factor when you probably consider this and the other CRAMS stroke API players as well. And the third element, as I said, I think it really depends in terms of the development of molecules at their end. So I think in a particular quarter, you'll see revenues probably getting bunched up, and in one quarter it probably disappoints. So I think the overall business model suggests that the lumpiness in earnings is very well expected to continue. Considering where the stock is at this point of time, I think very near to its fair valuation. So I think some profit booking has definitely crept in at this point of time.
Okay, profit booking is what you're seeing. And in fact, look at the markets. We're at day's low now. Nifty is down 90 to 95 points. I just want to highlight, I think we're around the lows of yesterday's as well, from where we bounced back. This was the level 11,820 thereabouts, and Bank Nifty is also down about 380 points in trade. So once again, index was approaching the mark of every time closer to 11,900. You're seeing that profit booking kicking in, and right now Nifty is down about 90 points in trade. Just want to highlight one stock, and that's Diwan Housing, with regard to it, which it may enter into the ban period for Monday's trade. The stock came out of the F&O ban for yesterday's trade. Just to revisit, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all 3 days when it was in the ban period, the stock was moving higher on account of short covering rally. It came out of F&O ban yesterday, which gave a room to traders to create fresh short positions, and that continued in today's trade as well. It's down 4%, and the open interest as a percentage of market-wide position limit yesterday was around 84 for a stock to enter the ban. It has to breach the 90 95% mark, and the data as of now does indicate that it could cross the mark of 95. Just a caveat here, the trends do change in the last 10 to 15 minutes of trade. So very quickly, Brijesh, if I could come to you and take a technical check on Diwan Housing. I'm sure it's looking weak, but if somebody is holding shorts here, what would you recommend?
See, I would be suggesting to hold on short, and suppose someone wants to go for a fresh shot also, they can go at the present rate. 84 to 86 band is a tough resistance to cross right now in a shorter term time frame, and whereas the downside has been concerned, immediate suppose lies somewhere around 75.5 to 76. If we are giving closing below 75.5, then the even the chances are that the stock is heading for the level of 70 or below also.
Yeah, just look at the markets, and they just come off quite rapidly. 427 points. Now, we just marked it. I'm just remarking it again. There's a sharp gash on the Nifty Bank in particular, 430 points for that, and over 100 points for the Nifty 50 as well. But just a quite sharp gash that has come in. Before we get to Darshan and Yatin for figuring out what dealing room sources are saying, Pritesh, would you take a trade on the Nifty Bank? It's worsening further now, 30,529. That's about 450 points lower.
Now see, the move looks exaggerated, but as we have seen earlier, the last hour, last 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes moves can be deceiving in nature. So I think we should not form an opinion on the movement last 10 minutes. But yes, I think it is important for Bank Nifty to sustain about 30,100. But that is a critical gain level also. So because I think a pullback rally could set in around that mark, because as we have seen so far in last couple of days that Bank Nifty has been resilient among all the indices. So I think I'm expecting bounce to come in around those levels.
Wow, okay, let's wait and see if the bounce comes about there or no. But for now, certainly looking under pressure. Time to get a sense of what dealing rooms are recommending as well. Are they also nervous? Darshan and Yatin join in with their channel checks. Good afternoon, both of you. Yatin, let's start off with you first.
Well, Neeraj, if you look at the markets, they have corrected. However, the dealers' recommendations were taken 15-20 minutes back. So, the sudden fall probably had led to some cool off. Pharmaceutical stocks have been bouncing from the day's low. Be it Sun Pharma, Aurobindo, Lupin, all of these stocks have seen a 4-5% bounce back from the day's low. Dealers do indicate that at Lupin, domestic funds are buyer at lower levels, and probably that is the reason the stock is holding out despite a weak market today. Apart from Lupin, we have NMDC. We have been talking about this stock in the past 2-3 days. But dealers do indicate that there has been some bout of short covering which is happening in for these metal names, especially the likes of NMDC. This stock is up 1% as we speak on decent volumes of 45 lakh shares. And finally, in the financial services space, do watch out for REC. This is one stock wherein dealers, based on F&O trends, are recommending a buy today, sell tomorrow kind of a strategy. But Darshan has a few more stocks.
Yeah, so a couple of stocks. Bajaj Auto for one is down in today's trade, is down 2%. Some of the domestic funds have actually been selling Bajaj Auto. The auto consumption story somehow does not suit well with them, so there is selling that's happening on the counter. One stock in which there is a buy recommendation, and that is TCS, trading near record highs. Dealers believe that the momentum will continue on the upside. When the entire market is slightly looking weak, this is a safe haven bet that you should take. And one counter which is down in trade is IndusInd Bank. It's down almost 4% and it's corrected significantly from the highs. Some of the FIs are selling actively, given the market conditions are extremely weak, and the concerns regarding the asset quality and the exposure to certain names does not bode well for the company. So that's why it's down in trade.
4.5% lower, and it's been lower now for the last 2 days. I think the UBS not maybe longer. But yep, certainly looking very, very wobbly for IndusInd Bank. We are almost 1% off for the benchmark indices as well. But we are on the topic of that, wasn't it? IndusInd Bank. Somehow I can't get to talk about the gainers, just the losers are just so much more pronounced. Mayuresh, what do you do with an IndusInd Bank?
So clearly, Neeraj, I think there are apprehensions which are getting laid out in terms of asset quality issues, succession plans, so on and so forth. For the succession plans, again, I think the management has made it very, very clear. I think they have got a strategic roadmap that has probably been laid out. But the markets are probably reacting to bunching up all these factors together. When it probably comes to the asset quality issues as well, I think the kind of slippages that we probably witnessed, 3,700 odd crores in terms of fresh slippages, 3,000 crores were from the ILFS issue itself. So I think corporate slippages still accounted for a major chunk, and corporate loans do account for a major chunk as well at 61 odd % of the overall advances growth. The third element obviously is the kind of expectations that one really has in terms of slippages going forward as well. And a large element believes that 1.9 to 2% is the annualized slippage run rate that the bank can probably report. When you're talking about the granularity that you're probably seeing in terms of the reported fee income, I think that is showing reasonable amount of traction. I think the only sore points that probably remain is the corporate loan still accounting for 61%, as I said. The expectations in terms of retail deposits at 20 odd % again becomes a little bit of a hindrance. But again, I think the bank has been guiding for the NIMs to get maintained between the 3.7, 3.8%. And with Bharat Financial's high yielding assets coming through, I think that number can actually inch higher. So in my opinion, I think there are some signs where I think provisioning can go up, credit costs can remain a little bit elevated. But again, I think apparently if the management here says to be believed, and if one really assumes that these numbers will play out, I think anybody holding on to the stock should continue holding. A clear disclaimer, we own the stock in advance.
Okay, Mayuresh, the other set of stocks which have corrected quite strongly to the other Z Group stocks. Any views? ZTV is down, Dish TV is down, their NBFC arm LKP Finance is down 10%. Everything related to that pack has corrected big time today.
So I think all these stories which are probably in the market, Neeraj, at this point of time, I think for the Z Group in particular, again, I think the kind of deal that comes through, which largely should by the end of July, is what the management had put forth. I think everything rests on those factors, and even for the associate companies as well. So I think with Dish TV's business model, I was not convinced even earlier, not convinced even now at this point of time. But for Z in particular, again, I think, as I said, I think apart from the deal, if you probably look at the core fundamentals, I think they have held on pretty well. New tariffs have probably impacted both the subscription and the ad revenue growth. But again, I think the expectations of that stabilizing along with operating performance actually stabilizing, and including the expectations of increased expenditure still on their OTT platform Z5 expected to continue, I think it's a reasonable set of numbers that the company has posted. So I think if there is a reasonable amount of the enterprise value that the deal probably receives, I think the street should take it positively. So again, I think holding on to my guns, at least as ZTV is concerned in my portfolio, with the assumption that there would be a positive impact if there is a significant value that gets created because of the deal that probably goes through in the next few weeks.
Okay, we'll have to wait and watch when the deal is announced, but for the time being, Z is witnessing correction. The stock sitting with cuts of about 5%. Just to mark, index Nifty actually breached the 11,800 mark, which was a support, but there was some buying which may have come in at those levels because the maximum open interest was at the 11,800 put. Currently, the index is trading around the mark of 11,813. It's 3:20 that time of the show when we get you the closing strategies from our technical experts. Brijesh, let me come to you first. For Monday's trade, do you have any BTST or STBT? Brijesh, okay, Pritesh, let me come to you first while we fix the audio of Brijesh. Any BTST or any STBT for Monday's session?
I have a short-term recommendation, that is BEL. Now see, we have to look at the broader structure. The trend of the counter change, a couple of months back when he made a terrific move from 88 to 110 odd levels. Thereafter, the stock went through a bit of retracement, went through a bit of correction. It found support at the midpoint of the entire big bar which it had made. So I think that this counter is in the process of beginning its previous up move. So buy for a target of 120 and maintain a stop loss of 106.
Okay, that's a buy call on Bharat Electronics. Mayuresh, if I could come to you, Hexaware announced an acquisition of Mobiquity, a US-based company, for about $182 million. The stock did open with some bit of gains, but it's given up all the gains that we actually saw in the morning session and now slipped into the red, with markets also trending lower. What's the call on Hexaware? Do you see any valuation comfort in this IT company compared to the larger ones like Infi or, for that matter, TCS?
No, so Navneet, I think we're still comfortable and have an equal weight stance on the large cap IT names. What guidances the management have probably given out and the expectations in terms of global slowdown actually hitting discretionary spending patterns across industries, I think one really needs to take that into consideration over the next few quarters as well. But at this point of time, I think if you probably assume constant currency guidances that the management have put forth and expectations of the strong order wins that are probably there on the books, at least for the large cap players, I think the order execution thereof, the percentage of digital wins, stability that you've probably seen in arresting the attrition rates, though a tad bit higher for a few players within this space also, I think utilization levels will inch up. And as those parameters probably are suggesting, and if one really presumes the markets to be very, very volatile for all these conditions going forward, I think IT stocks might just be in the flavor for at this point of time. But again, I think an equal weight stance is what we've got for IT. I think more biased was the large cap IT players. Infosys, HCL Tech is something we continue holding in our large cap portfolios.
Okay, I think Brijesh is back with us. Brijesh, your closing strategy, any BTST or any STBT for Monday's trade?
Yeah, nowadays it would be STBT. The first STBT call would be Ultratech Cement. The shorter-term time frame charts are suggesting a selling pressure with the oscillator pointing towards the south side with increase in volume. So present rate of 44.92, the stock has been quoting. One can take a sell side with a stop loss of 46 and 15 and play for the target of 4300. That would be the initial first target, and it can be extended to the level of 42.50 also. The second sell call would be Voltas. Right now the stock is quoting somewhere around 605. On a hourly chart, the lower highs formation is giving a sell call, so one can take a sell side at 605 with a stop loss of 615 and play for the target of 592 to 594. That is the first target. Even the target can be extended to the level of 582.
Okay. Pull up Biocon. Remember, the pharma stocks have been weak, but this one went ex-bonus yesterday and the stock opened lower and remained lower. There were fresh short positions seen. And in today's session also, Biocon is down about 3%. Pritesh, would you advise holding on to shorts in Biocon, or it's time to book profits?
I think there could be more on the downside. Yes, the stock has gone down by 6% for the week, but looking at this, the way that the stock has performed, it attempted a move prior towards 289 as a 3-digit GAN number. Thereafter, it failed to sustain and went lower. I believe that there could be more on downside. 225 to 20 could be the near-term target.
Okay, and Mayuresh, just one final thought from amongst stable stocks which have corrected and trading close to fresh 52-week lows for themselves include a Biocon and a Hindustan Zinc. Any thoughts on either of them fundamentally?
I was saying one really needs to give it time, Neeraj. And again, I think the kind of numbers that one really expects, say for example a Biocon, I think the biosimilar portfolio that they probably have, I think the inflection point in terms of reported earnings will come after a few quarters. The second element in terms of their Malaysian facility and the kind of depreciation that they're probably reporting out of that, I think the stability of that facility should also come through over the next few quarters. For companies like a Zinc that you mentioned, I think what probably happens in terms of pricing at this point of time, specifically with the overhang of US-China trade tariffs and the war still expected to continue at a scale that one really doesn't know about at this point of time. I think metal pricing is taking a knock, and what probably happens in terms of the demand-supply dynamics, if demand continues to languish and remain weak, I think the LME realizations itself will be a cause of worry. Though I think inventory levels are extremely low at this point of time, I think these concerns are something which will still create some amount of an overhang. So I think wait out for the quarter's numbers. I think let's see what probably comes out and what the environment is looking at that point of time, and the management guidance as well. I think that will give us a better picture both in terms of clarity of the environment at large and the company dynamics in particular in terms of how that environment is shaping up.
Leave it at that, Mayuresh. Thanks much for taking the time out and being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Well, it's turning out to be a bad end to a poor week because we are ending almost at the lowest point of the day. Doubt that the world markets are so precipitously placed, but we've just cracked in the last 45 minutes of trade, and I reckon that, or last 15 minutes of trade, to be honest, and I reckon that the market breadth would also have turned for the adverse. The mid cap and the small cap indices should come up on your screen. And yes, you can see 1/3% at the start of the show, now down nearly 1%, actually over 1% for the mid cap space as well. So the breadth too would have turned negative. We'll talk about that. First, the large cap space and the losers and the gainers. The gainers, Bharti Infra, about 1.5%. Some gains for L&T, some gains for Sun Pharma and Power Grid, about 0.5%, but those are few and far in between. So not too many major gains. What about losses? IndusInd Bank and Z. Two stocks 4.5% lower, Bharti about 3% lower, iShares, Axis. So autos and rate sensitives by and large have corrected. Z is a specific stock specific move, and then the likes of Ultratech, etc. have corrected too. But largely rate sensitives have really taken it on the chin in today's session. What about the broader end of the spectrum, Navi?
It is the same even for the broader markets. You had the benchmarks correcting and broader markets also saw selling pressure. I'm going to start off with few gainers though. HDFC, AMC did well. In fact, the stock still is closing in the green despite of markets turning weak. So that's going to close with gains of about 2%. DMAT is the other one which saw some buying coming in today's session. DMAT saw gains of about 1.5%, though it's ending the session off the day's high. RITES is the other one we've been talking about. This counter saw some buying in today's trade. The stock is finally looking to close around the levels of 293 with gains of about closer to 6%. The other gainers are Cummins, which was one of the top F&O gainers also for the day, which went up in the second half of the session, as you can see on your screen. 760 is the level where it will be closing, and Manappuram Finance touching once again its all-time high levels. Fresh long positions continue here as well. In a weak market like today is also, the stock went up 1.3% higher. On the losing side, well, I've got a lot of stocks and your usual suspects, high beta when market falls. One of them is Jet Airways, down 11%. It's become a double-digit stock now. Reliance Capital is the other one, which fell about 9%. Remember, these stocks will move out of the derivative space from the next series, so 13% lower. Bharat Financial with IndusInd Bank falling. You'll also see Bharat Financial falling because of the merger, 4.5% lower for this one. Syngene, which was the top gainer in the Nifty Midcap 100 index yesterday, gained about 6%. It gave up all its gains in today's trade and had a sharp fall, closing around the day's low with cuts of about 9%. DLF from the Realty Pack saw some selling. DLF is finally closing around the levels of about 176.9. And your pharma stocks were weak today. So Biocon, in fact, for the second straight day after going ex-bonus in yesterday's session, second straight day of shorting also on the futures side. 247 is the level. Aurobindo Pharma was the other one, which saw selling pressure on back of the news. 616 is where that one's going to close. And from the cement space, you had Ambuja Cement, which saw selling pressure. That's closing around the day's low mark with cuts of about 3% around the levels of 214. And finally, you've got United Spirits. The stock's been reeling under pressure. There's no buying, which is primarily coming in here. 550 is the level where United Spirits is finally closing around. And the stock was down about nearly 2.5% to 3% in today's session. But net-net, one would have expected some buying to come in today's trade after the gains that we saw in yesterday's session, at least in the last hour. And Neeraj, the last hour has been interesting, not only today, yesterday, but for a very long time. I think there are big moves that one get to see in the last hour of trade.
Yeah, unfortunately in today's session on the downside and a steep gash at that too. But yeah, a weekday, we close to a poor week as we said. Let's get the weekly gainers and losers up on the screen. For the index move should also come in, and then we'll of course get in what the individual names are doing as well in the session today, in the session for the week gone by. So kind of a slightly poor performance. So 0.5% for the Nifty. But look at the losses down there. Yes Bank, a stock in news, down about 18%. Indiabulls Housing Finance, despite the clarification, down 9%. IndusInd Bank down about 9%. And then the entire auto pack, we were talking about a recovery, a possible recovery. Well, Maruti, Bajaj, Tata Motors, Hero MotoCorp, rate sensitives have been brutalized in the week gone by, Navneet.
That's right. Let's just pull up the Nifty mid-cap, I think we can just address the gainers. Steel stocks, we did see some bit of gains, I think, towards the start of the week. So Tata Steel was one of them. And if you look at the mid-cap space, the Nifty mid-cap 100 index was down 1.5% for the week. And I'm going to start off with the gainers. Manappuram Finance is one of them, and we've been highlighting that counter for you. Sterlite Tech, because of the pledge being released by the promoters, that stock saw gains of about 6%. But I guess after that day, there was some selling seen. PI Industries, Quest Corp, L&T Tech were a couple of other gainers, which gained between 3 to 6%. On the losing side, your usual suspects, it's all Reliance, Anil Ambani Group companies. So Reliance Capital tumbling about 26%, Infra down about 19%, Reliance Power also falling about 12%, and Dilip Bilcon was the other stock which saw some weakness in this week. So that's closed 11% lower for the week. Besides that, RBL Bank, Indiabulls Ventures, and something like NBCC, and also Escorts, I think that was weak in today's trade as well. And I was just checking the data. I think there was some shorting seen here as well.
Yeah, and I'm guessing the small cap space would also have some of these usual suspects. Jet Airways 35% lower, and we've not seen the end of the day. We somehow didn't talk about Jet Airways because it seems to be a foregone conclusion. But Gen Irrigation Systems down about 14%. Deepak Nitrite corrected about 12%, and that's usually a strong stock. Radico Khaitan about 10% as well. Not the best of week for a lot of these names, good or bad.
Yep, a couple of gainers when you had losers. Fortis Healthcare 7% higher for the week. UCO Bank saw some gains, and RITES was the one. I think primarily it went up in today's trade. And you had stocks like Persistent Systems, PNC Infra, and something like Syndicate Bank. The gains were quite restricted in the range of about 3 to 4%.
Yep. Anyways, final thoughts from our experts on that note. Brijesh, looking at the close today, what are the levels that you're now setting yourself up for the Nifty Bank for the next week?
See, Neeraj, if we talk about Bank Nifty, last time also I have spoken 31,100 to 31,250 would be acting as a resistance. Now, that time, if I'm not mistaken, Bank Nifty got close somewhere around 30,900 or 30,850 zone. Now, since today it has closed somewhere around 30,500 around, immediate support which I am looking at would be 30,300, but chances are that that support might be broken in an intraday or in coming week. And the strong support which I am looking would be somewhere around 29,600 to 29,600 and 29,700 zone. So chances are that Bank Nifty would be drifting and would be touching the level of 29,600 to 29,700. That is on the higher side. Now the immediate resistance lies at 30,800 to 30,850 band, followed by 31,100. Whereas the Nifty has been concerned, if we talk about, then Nifty had a support at 11,720. But the important support for a momentum to continue for a short term to a medium term concern is 11,600 zone. So that should not be get broken. Whereas on the higher side, again, 11,950 or say 11,990 would be acting as a resistance. So the broader picture is 11,600 on downside, followed by 11,950 on the higher side.
Okay, Brijesh, your closing thoughts?
Pritesh. Now, Pritesh, I think the question is for you.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Now see, as I mentioned at the start of the show, the Nifty has been trapped in the range of 200 points for last couple of days, for last 2 weeks, and nothing much has changed. Yes, this 100 points, 90 points decline in last 15 minutes, looks, provides a bleak outlook. But we are still very much in the same trading range. My concern would arise only when we break below the low which was created on the 7th of June. A movement below 11,770 would mean that Nifty is now getting back to, it's trying to get back to its previous breakout point, which was 11,600. So I think we are talking about small retracement in drop move. So nothing, we don't see a big concern as of now.
Okay, on that note, we thank both our guests, Pritesh as well as Brijesh. Appreciate both of you joining today on this show once again, and have a good weekend. Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Countdown. It's goodbye from Neeraj, my side, and the entire team who put this show together. But stay tuned to Bloomberg Quint. Bloomberg Quint's Market Trap comes up next.